So let's talk about Elon Musk. He posted a clarification to the Twitter speech policy. Essentially, he says he refuses to bring Alex Jones back on, even though he's brought a lot of people back on, including Kathy Griffin, Babylon B, Jordan Peterson. So they are in the process of bringing people back, but not Alex Jones. And on the right side of the Twitter space, there's been quite a bit of pushback because he hasn't been very clear about why this is. And a lot of people feel that, well, if you're not bringing back Alex Jones, then it proves that you're not really dedicated to free speech, et cetera, et cetera.
Not just, I think it's not just about Alex Jones, but also just kind of his attitude, right? The way he replied to Viva Frei and just said, too bad.
He's very short about it. But here's the thing. That's the way Elon Musk talks to people. And it's funny when it happens to people on the left because we like when Elon Musk dunks on them, but this is who he is. This is the way he's going to talk to people. I think you just have to have some acceptance of that. If you love it when he talks to people on the left that way, then he's going to talk to Viva Frei that way too. It's not like it's not like he's team Republican or anything just because he said to vote Republican in this midterm. It's not like he has a team. I don't think that that's the case. I know there's been a lot of pushback.
Yeah, I mean he's supposed to be team free speech though, and I don't necessarily think this was a right versus left thing. It was more of a free speech thing. Although Alex Jones.
Well, on Twitter it breaks down right versus left when it comes to free speech these days. I am understanding of it because you have to understand that Alex Jones is different than a Babylon B, than a Jordan Peterson. It's just there's a gradient here as far as people who said mean things that hurt the feelings of trans people or offended people who just need to get over being offended. You put people like Babylon B and Jordan Peterson in that category. People like Alex Jones are in a different category. He was found guilty of defamation, in his Sandy Hook case. It's still consistent with what Elon Musk has always said, which is that he's for free speech, but the definition of free speech for him is whatever the legal limits of speech are in that jurisdiction, right? So if you're in America, he wants you to have free speech, but only up to the legal limits. There are legal limits. There always have been. That's not new. And I don't think that anybody argues that there should be zero legal limits, even a maximalist like myself. There's still things like defamation. There's still things like call to violence that should clearly not be covered by free speech. I wouldn't say he's made this decision based on the fact that Alex Jones had a court case, a defamation case go against him. I don't think that's exactly the reason. The reason is that there's just so much political pressure for Alex Jones. That's the reality of it. And that's why Trump still hasn't been put back on, even though Trump hasn't been convicted of anything. He hasn't been found guilty of anything. He's just the president of the United States, just said mean things. And there has been no court case that indicates that Trump has broken the law regarding what speech he's committed. It's a political thing, but he's covered in the sense that Alex Jones also is fundamentally different than people like Jordan Peterson, people like Babylon B. It still fits with his definition of free speech. And the way he responded, I agree, is short, is not necessarily as transparent, or he didn't elaborate the way we would want him to, but that is his personality. That you take the good with the bad. He's going to talk to you the way he talks to other people, and he's not going to switch it around based on team this or team that. The other thing that I would say is that this strikes me as a clear, typical situation where people have their idealism, they have their ideas of how the world should work, and they act on it, and they talk a big talk, and it's not that they're being disingenuous, but at some point they run into certain realities that they were not necessarily aware of before, and their behavior just has to change. Their compromises have to be made. If you're just a pragmatic, reasonable person, the example that I'll give, the analogy that I'll make is, remember when Obama was running for president? In 2008, the wars in the Middle East were super unpopular. Nobody thought weapons of mass destruction were real, even though they kind of were. People were tired of the wars. They didn't see an end point. They were just sick of it. They didn't like watching people being beheaded online. So there was a lot of sentiment against the wars. And Obama, of course, said, I'm going to end the wars. You can just go back and see. He didn't say, I'm going to continue them for years on end. He didn't say that. He said, I'm going to end them. That's why he kind of got into office and immediately got a Nobel Peace Prize, which he didn't deserve. But a funny thing happened between Obama, the candidate, and Obama, the president. He became president, and the realities of the situation, which perhaps he didn't understand at the time when he was running, to be fair, the realities of the situation made him change his behavior. And what was the result? The result was Obama didn't end any wars. In fact, the wars continued for 8 years. He had plenty of opportunities to pull out every single troop in the Middle East, which is what sort of he implied he would do, but he just put it off and put it off and put it off. And before long, people just stopped talking about it. And then now Obama has 8 years of war, which is more than Bush had. So you have to ask yourself, why would somebody was he just lying when he was running? No, I don't think he was lying. I think he was sincere in thinking that I want to end these wars. I want to pull the troops out. But once you get to the seat of power, once you see what the situation on the ground is, it's not so easy. There's things that you understand that the people out there don't understand. And I think that's what's happening with Musk. There's things that he is facing now, such as advertiser fallout, such as Google and Apple controlling their Play Store. These things all are coalescing to limit what Elon can and can't do. So when he bought Twitter, yeah, you can talk a big game about how pro free speech you are, but once you actually own it, the realities on the ground cause certain compromises. And one of these compromises for him is that there's some people who cannot be let back on the platform for now, at least. There's some people who can. He let back Babylon B, Jordan Peterson, but it's not always as easy as and as idealistic as it was when you weren't in power. Once you actually gain control, then you find out, oh, this is the real situation. Oh, these are the compromises that really are unavoidable. And I think that's how you got Obama, the anti-war candidate. He became a president who presided over 8 years of war somehow. I don't think it's because he came into office and suddenly decided that war is awesome and that he loves this war. I just think he understood the realities of it and how pulling out has certain consequences that are undesirable. And his hands were tied. It wasn't a situation where you could just do whatever you want without compromises. And those compromises often lead to, and people on the outside don't always understand this because you're not in charge of Twitter and you're not the president of the United States. So it's really hard to understand this on the outside. But once you're in that seat, then you will understand that you're not God. So compromises have to be made.
I agree with everything you said, but it doesn't change, my opinion that he handled this extremely poorly.
Well, what else could he have done?
He should have. I don't see any reason why, visibility on this has to be so, why does everything have to be so opaque? Like, okay, if it's true that, Google and Apple, for example, are, significant pressures or counter forces, he could mention stuff like that. I mean, there maybe strategically you could say, oh, there's some reason why he can't, but I just think he handled this very poorly. This actually reminded me of, the whole Trump and Candace Owens fallout. It's like Elon, he is the richest and one of the most powerful people on the planet, but he's not going to be able to do this alone. And people like Viva Frei clearly have, in my opinion, they have Elon's back essentially. And to just respond to somebody like that, it's he could have handled this in so many other ways. He could have, for example, one thing that Tim suggested is, Elon could have just said nothing and not responded.
Right.
I don't think
he doesn't have to respond to everything.
Yeah, most of these people, including myself, actually, I don't want to speak for, but I think it sounds like you and I have no problems if Alex Jones is not restored on Twitter. And I actually disagree with Viva Frey when he's like saying, I'll just read his tweet. Alex Jones is the litmus test, Elon Musk, not just on the issue of freedom of speech, but on the issue of not bending the knee to political and judicial intimidation. If this is a hard no, your Twitter will never be any more trustworthy than Paraga or Jack's Twitter. And I don't even agree with what Viva said. And I actually think I'm surprised that he made a statement like that, being a lawyer himself, right? Like he clearly is aware, probably more aware than either of us about what are the legal limits of speech, and probably that Alex
Probably,
Jones
right. And it's just
crossed that.
such a black and white statement. And black and
Yeah,
white statements are rarely defensible and rarely age well,
yeah, yeah.
right?
It's actually kind of uncharacteristic, in my opinion, of him because I consider Viva to be pretty,
He's a smart
uh,
guy.
yeah, smart guy and kind of grounded, grounded thinker. And I absolutely don't agree with anything with what he said here. But Elon Musk just replying too bad, like,
But that's so hit on brand though, right? It's so on brand. I agree. I agree. He should
I think we gotta call out Elon on this because
he he should
I don't
probably
think he.
recognize that this guy is more on my team and I should, be a little nicer to him.
Yeah,
I think just just realistically speaking, that's in his interest. But it's just so on brand. I mean, Elon's not going to change himself. He's not perfect. He's a human being. He's not perfect. We idolize him, but he's certainly not perfect. And
well, I mean, this is an eye opener for me. This is just like Trump calling out Candace. I mean, this tweet makes me kind of reevaluate, a little bit.
well, I mean, he's
Uh,
he's the richest man on earth. He's won in so many instances. He has a big ego. Let's just be frank about that, right? And I'm not even saying that as a pejorative. He deserves to have a big ego. If I had the accomplishments of Elon Musk, I'd be fucking worse than him. I would tell people to fuck off like nonstop. You know? That would be me. But I think he's actually restrained considering his accomplishments and his standing in this world. So, but we have to accept that he's not perfect and he has an ego. Yeah, he probably should. He didn't have to respond to Viva Frey. He could have just said nothing.
yep.
Or he could have said, he could have said something like, we have a process for this sort of thing. Just be patient. If he just said that, he didn't have to stop being opaque. That's as opaque as you can get. But I don't think he would have the same pushback.
I totally agree. Yeah, this is it's kind of an own goal, in my opinion. He's just yeah.
And some people, they're speculating, well, he'll bring Alex Jones back later. Well, if you're going to bring him back later, then there's no need to say no right now. Just don't say anything. There's no need. And I can understand why he doesn't want to be transparent either. That's another thing. He's in a very delicate negotiation with advertisers and with probably
Yeah, yeah,
Google and Apple. And it would not help his negotiations with them to say something like, I can't do anything because these guys are assholes.
yeah.
Well,
I
that's
agree.
not, you shouldn't
Yeah.
say that out loud.
There could be sort of strategy or competition or game theory sort of considerations
Right. He shouldn't say,
for
well, these
transparency.
people are limiting me. And, then when he goes to talk to them, they'll say, hey, what the fuck, dude? You just threw us under the bus.
But he could say it doesn't mean he can't say anything though, right? There's still like he could be vague. Um,
Or he
there's
could
still
even just
things.
be silent. That would be better.
Yeah, yeah. I just have to say like I'm disappointed by this
Well,
tweet.
well, you have to embrace his flaw. You have to accept his flaws. You don't have to embrace them. You have to accept them. This is a man who he's not Trump's level, but in the same vein as Trump, Elon has been known to get high and tweet at weird hours while high. Okay?
Hmm.
How different is this than Trump tweeting out like Kofefe accidentally? It's not that different. I mean, he's clearly more intelligent than Trump, and he's clearly more controlled than Trump, but not totally. I mean, he
Right. I mean,
has
he's obviously made some expensive, costly
Yeah, he's
tweets
made
in the past.
tweets
Yeah,
and statements in the past that have cost him millions of dollars.
yeah.
That's just a fact. And we don't have to go back to, the SEC fining him and all that sort of stuff. He's
I
a
mean,
person who
still,
has,
the thing is, he's the guy who tweeted him, or was it a tweet that he said he was a free speech absolutist, right? That's why people are
I
are
know, I know,
are
I know.
pushing on him, right? It's like,
Well, yeah, yeah. This goes back to we talked about how well if you put your words out for public consumption, it'll be contradictory at some point.
right.
I'm sure he was sincere at the time, but he didn't know when he said that he didn't know that he would be buying Twitter someday, and he didn't know all the pressures that would come from buying Twitter. And there's this group that you have to please, and there's that group that you have to please, and oh, I didn't consider that if I do this or if I let this guy back on, then I lose this amount of money. And, you now have a $44 billion company you need to make successful. You didn't know all of that when 3 years ago when you tweeted out your free speech absolutist. You didn't know all of that. Just like Obama didn't know whatever he
Was it
found
that long
out.
ago? I thought that was
Even a
more
year ago,
recent.
that's before he bought Twitter, right?
Okay,
Even
I
6 months
thought
ago, that's before he actually got Twitter, right?
I thought it might have already been, for example, post Babylon B getting banned or something like that.
Yeah, even if it's months ago, that's still ages ago in internet time. It's before he actually owned Twitter and found out
Yeah,
what that meant. So
yeah,
that is ages ago. Um, just like I don't really even blame people like Obama for this happens to a lot of presidents. They say a lot of things and they get into office and those things don't happen and everyone thinks they're just liars. No, they're not just liars. They did not understand the reality of what it meant once you get into office. Like, who knows what happened? Who knows what inside information that Obama was privy to once he became president that made it clear that, yeah, it's a bad idea to just pull all of our troops out. It's not a great idea. And even a person who was against the war could be reasonably look at the information and say, well, it's not a great idea, so we're going to stay. Who knows what information he has access to? Maybe when you
yeah.
become
But
president,
that's
you find out the aliens are running the whole thing and you have no choice, right? We don't know. That's
yeah, but that's
just,
also yeah that's also giving them the benefit of the doubt, though.
it is, but I would give them the benefit of the doubt because this happens so many times. If it was just most people who ran for president kept all of their promises and you're the one asshole who didn't, then I would say, well, you're probably just a liar. But you find almost very consistently that people say things while they're running for president and suddenly when they get in, oh, they can't do that or it has to be watered down a whole lot because they just run into the reality of the situation. You were a kid, a wide-eyed, idealistic kid talking big when you were running for president, and then when you actually have to pay the bills, the story changes quite a bit. When you actually have to pay the bills and you know the reality of how the world works, a lot of compromises need to be made. You become an adult, right? This is like the difference between being a kid and being an adult. Elon Musk, before he bought Twitter, and his ideas about free speech and about it's like a kid talking his ideals. Once he actually bought the thing and you have to pay the bills, sometimes it's different. Sometimes a lot more compromises have to be made, and I just think that that's a typical dynamic. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm making excuses for him, but the fact that this dynamic, this switch up happens in politics, it happens in so many arenas, leads me to believe that, yeah, this is what's happening here. I will give him the benefit of the doubt. Just wait and see. I mean, we were just talking about how, well, if he doesn't reestablish Babylon B before X time, then we'll jump ship. Well, he brought back Babylon B. He brought back Jordan Peterson. Now let's wait for some of the others, right? Like Project Veritas. Project Veritas is not guilty of a crime. They haven't been found guilty in court, or liable in court. So let's just wait on that. Um,
What about Trump? I mean, I don't really even see the argument for keeping Trump off.
this is not a legal issue at this point. It's not about who has the best legal argument. Legally speaking, of course, Trump should come back. Morally speaking, of course, Trump should come back. philosophically speaking, he should come back. But this is
Okay,
you're running
so
into
then
the
you're
real
saying,
world of the advertisers and the other forces pressing on you.
yeah, okay. So you're saying it's financial.
It's financial. Twitter has to stay afloat. How much money is he burning every day on
I
Twitter?
don't think I really don't think Trump coming back is going. Obviously I don't know, but my guess is, if anything, it'll be a net positive. I mean, look at ever since Elon's bought Twitter. If you believe his charts of the activity, it's gone.
He
It's
needs to
going
keep,
up
but he needs to keep some advertisers in the fold, right?
for now.
For
Yes, I
now.
guess
I
for
mean,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
he needs to keep some advertisers in the fold. And
But do you really think advertisers actually care?
I think so. I think that that must be the only
I
reason
mean,
that he's
th
this pressured.
yeah, I mean, there's probably some fraction of advertisers, maybe a large fraction, which are kind of like SJW advertisers. But it sounds like those have
Yeah,
already left.
perfect
Like,
ESG scores. Well, but they need to come back. Elon needs their money in the meantime before he can institute, Twitter Blue bringing in revenue, uh, before he implements our idea about super chats. He needs to have some time. He needs to have some runway. And his poll about whether I should bring back Trump or not, I think that honestly, I think that that's a kind of put there as evidence to advertisers that people want Trump back or something. I don't know, because this is a negotiation at this point. This is not about principle. It's not about who wins an argument. This is high powered negotiation at this point between him and people like Google, people like Apple, people like the advertisers. It's not about right and wrong and who's right in the argument. That's irrelevant at this point. And that's why the people talking about, well, I mean, if you're for this principle and you brought these people back, then why, based on those same parameters, can Trump not be brought back? Can Alex Jones not be? It's none of that is relevant. It's not about that. It's just about what they want, what Elon wants, what they're negotiating, and what comes of it.
I mean, I have a very cynical view of advertising on Twitter as a whole. Like, I just think it was basically just, deals were made in an era where effectiveness really was not was not one of the main metrics. And I think, yeah, there was probably a lot of it is just, you know,
Yeah, but he needs to keep them in the fold.
basically supporting advertisers just wanting to support Twitter because of its political ideals. And now that Elon's in,
Well,
they
it's
just
fine. It's
they don't
fine.
want.
He just needs enough of them to come to maintain. And over time, as he changes the business model, he makes Twitter profitable based on other things, except besides advertising. Hopefully, I think that's his ultimate goal. Then he can start to divorce from them. And once he divorces from them, he has more leeway to run Twitter as a real, true free speech platform. But
It's a little weird though, because if he was really concerned so much about revenue, it feels like he misplayed his hand already, right? Like
how?
he could have just kept everything, like in terms of policies, he could have kept the policies exactly the same.
No,
And
no, he
maybe it
couldn't do
sounds like
that
he
because
did.
then the people on the right would just revolt. They would just say, "What the hell? You said you were going to be a free speech person."
He could have still fired tons of people.
Here's the other thing. Remember, Elon has a big ego. Elon, he cuts a wide swath through the world. I bet you when he got to Twitter, he thought that he could do a little bit more than he can actually do, and he already did it. We believe that he genuinely wants to protect free speech. He genuinely thinks that this is like a societal good that is important. If he didn't think this, these people who think that Elon is doing this and, oh, you just want to protect your money, you just want to be richer. Like, guys, he would have been a lot richer if he just never even bought Twitter. Buying Twitter has really put a lot of fucking pressure on Tesla stock, which is his main source of wealth, isn't it? Right? And that's probably going to be the main driver of what makes him wealthy. So if he just ignored Twitter, it would have been better for his bottom line. He did it because he actually believes that this is important.
Well, short term, yeah, I agree, but long term, it's really hard to say.
Long term, it's hard to say, but long term, it's hard to say for him too, right? So I don't think that he did this move for financial reasons. Because if he was just thinking about, oh, what will make me a richer person, clearly, I think focusing on the companies he has would be the smartest bet. I don't think anybody would disagree with that because it's not as if the companies he already runs aren't awesome companies that, have a positive projection into the future. So, of course, focusing on them would be the best bet if he wants to be richer. Splitting his attention off into Twitter is really not a great bet to make him a richer person at the end of the day. So, for that reason, I take his word at it that his priority, his goal is somewhat altruistic. I mean, I'm sure he wants to make money from Twitter. I'm sure he thinks he can make it a positive, but he would have made more money if he just focused on Tesla. I really think so. And SpaceX.
Well, I think in the long run, he's going to be better off having bought Twitter. But yeah, I agree. It's
But it's
it's kind of it reminds me of Trump saying, I had a nice easy life.
I think in the long
He
run, well,
didn't have
it's a
to.
gamble though.
Trump
It's a
confessed
gamble
it.
though. It's a gamble he didn't have to take.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's a gamble he didn't have to take. Do the companies he already owned already made him the richest man on earth. There's really no need to take this gamble if your only interest is to be rich.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And I don't think there's nothing about the way he moves that makes me think that his goal is to be like twice as rich, to be the richest American ever, even richer than Rockefeller. I don't think that's his goal. So buying Twitter never made sense from a money making standpoint. It only makes sense if he really did believe in its importance in the mission of free speech. It really only made sense in that regard.
I just think Twitter going after the advertisers is just not. I think they could make money so much more effectively in other ways that
They
and
could,
also
but those things are not in place.
yeah, going after advertisers. It reminds me of what they were saying in one of those All In pods a while back about how brands are basically going to die, and it's just the world's going to move towards basically influencers are going to be the new brands, right? And Twitter has a clear opportunity to try and adopt that model.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, advertisers, I guess, yeah, just a stopgap. But well, he also sold a lot of Tesla stock as a stopgap as well. So
He did. And I think that's a clear indication that, well, I mean, if I were him, I'd want to diversify from Tesla stock too. But we still both believe that Elon is for free speech. You think that he stumbled here? And yeah, I would guess he'd stumble, but I don't think that drawing the line Alex Jones is a mistake. He probably understands certain trade-offs and compromises that need to happen in the background. So let's move on. We'll be talking about Elon and Twitter many, many times in the future.